The Bills have officially fired head coach Sean McDermott after the loss to the Broncos 9 seasons with the team. Was this the right move? And is he the one that should be carrying the blame? Let's get into it and look at the bigger picture for the Bills moving forward. Jeff Lloyd, the first big question of the day: should he have been fired? And I guess, were you surprised by this?
Whenever there's rumblings out there, I mean, I guess you probably put a little more, ear to the cement, so to speak, whether or not you think it's legitimate or not. I think for me, and part of it, like, is it one of those things where if they lost regardless, he was going to be fired? Because, you
Mm,
look at the way that game ended, obviously, look, I'm a wide receiver. I'm going to say Brandon Cooks caught that ball till the day he dies. You can tell me a million ways otherwise. I'm going to tell you he caught the ball. And then obviously, we get a little, charity happy with the penalty flags at the game, at the last drive, certainly something that nobody wanted to see at that point. And,
right.
I guess it was, the offensive tackle Brown from the Bills who said, look, man, I was holding people all day long. It's almost to the point like, hey, if we're going to start officiating this, is it us?
Mm,
Because if you're gonna let us go, obviously you give us an inch, we're gonna take a mile.
yeah.
And, so I think that's kind of what some of the Bills players probably felt. So if you look at the way the game ended, was that it? Regardless if he didn't win, did that mean, McDermott was moving on? My belief is there were probably some conversations and,
Mm,
and I hate to do this to any one player on Buffalo, but that's where you think it goes. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure the general manager and the ownership, look, Sean, we can't keep doing this, man. We got this guy. There should be, at least an appearance in the Super Bowl if we've got
yeah.
Josh Allen. And then I'm sure there's conversations with the quarterback. And it's, hey, has this relationship gone as far as it can go?
Mm,
Do you think there's anything, Sean can get out of you? Can get out of this team that maybe necessarily hasn't done to this point. Do I think this is 100% a Sean McDermott issue? I mean, we talked about the Buffalo Bills each and every week, and the one thing we kept coming up is, how is Josh Allen doing this? You basically, asking the guy to, make this 5-star meal, and
hmm.
he's got ingredients that you bought at Walmart. So it's really difficult to wonder how it was all going to come. Do I think was it right? It's hard to say, because, you know, I know the team you root for, teams I follow. Well, I've never had to say, "Oh, well, it's a shame that 7 years in a row in the playoffs couldn't get to the Super Bowl." Like, just
Mm,
to say that out loud is like, wow.
yeah.
But it also goes to show you, what the standards should be in this league. And,
Yeah,
if you're
exactly.
a team that is a winning team every year, you expect it to go, to a certain point. And, winning a Super Bowl, hey, who knows what happens in one game? But getting there, that means a lot to a lot of franchises.
Right.
And I think, the Bills, Allen, and maybe McDermott, once, he gets out of the rawness of this, probably all realize that we did everything we could.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it just was not good enough.
Well, and you touched on this. Is he a scapegoat here? Because, like you said, when I look at the issues of this team, I don't think coaching was necessarily the problem. I look at roster construction as just so many holes they had on that team where Josh Allen had to do it all himself. And then we saw a game where he didn't do it all himself. And he actually was causing a lot of the mistakes. Was he the scapegoat here? And should Brandon Bean's job have been safe in this situation, let alone be promoted?
Well, and I think that's where people kind of get like a little, promoted. Getting promoted from general manager means we're basically taking the general manager job away from you. So, I
Right.
don't know if it's
Fair.
necessarily a promotion where it's, hey, you've been around here forever. We're not going to do you like this, although we did do the coach like this. But it also means like maybe we're going to take, you're not going to have some of the day to day that you used to. So yeah, it might be a
Mm,
promotion as far as a title and maybe money, but if you think about it in the form of football tasking, I don't know that's necessarily a promotion in that spot.
right.
But you can't get around from the fact that the time he's been there, he's drafted three Pro Bowlers: Josh Allen, James Cook, and Dawson Knox. That's it.
Mm,
Nothing on the defensive side of the ball. And, for years, the conversation about the Buffalo Bills need a pass rusher. Buffalo Bills, oh, we need this. And, when we see teams like Baltimore and teams like Philadelphia over the years, maybe the offseason didn't get you what you wanted. Free agency, draft. but these were always the teams who were usually the most highly active in bringing in a player or two by the deadline and brand name type of guys. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Even if it was a short spell that they were there. And, sometimes it seems like, right around the deadline when they could have, taken good Buffalo teams and made them exceptional Buffalo Bills teams, they didn't. But there is no way you can just say this is all on McDermott.
Mhm.
For Josh Allen and the level that he is at as far as a quarterback in this league, and, having, where it was, the weekly we have to see the inactive list, not because of injuries for Buffalo, but it was just who they thought they had the most faith in that week.
Mm.
And that comes down to one person and one person only. That comes down to the guy who's handpicking the roster. Maybe they just didn't want to tear it all apart. I think maybe they also, going to a new stadium, maybe a new voice, a little new
Mm.
juice, just something to kick it all off. It's going to be interesting how it all works out because my first initial thought was something like this is, are you really sure you're gonna go get a better coach?
Mm.
Because that's really, I mean, you think you can. And whatever you think of Sean McDermott or not, his record speaks for himself, and
Yeah.
his January attendance year in, year out has been there. And, it's interesting, certainly. And I guess this was the 10th move to this point. And of course, now this shakes up a lot of things. I mean, you
Yeah,
got to
it sure
wonder right now
does.
if Harbaugh's going, well, maybe we should have just waited the weekend. Even Kevin
Mm.
Stefanski, hey, was there a shot I could have coached Josh Allen? I mean, there's thoughts probably going through these guys' heads right now. And also, if you're Buffalo, I mean, Stefanski was thought to be the number one guy until we knew Harbaugh was available. But now here you are, and you're going to get into this mix. And the two guys that most people felt were the best candidates
Yeah.
are already taken.
Yep. That is true. Did John Harbaugh make his decision too soon? Do you think?
The thing, we all get kind of caught up in how teams, are portrayed now. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? In the way they look. The New York Giants are an absolute legendary franchise in the
Mhm.
National Football League. The other thing is, Harbaugh, I guess it was a 5-year deal. You know, we just saw last year with the New York Giants, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much necessarily that they chose the New York Giants. It was that
Right.
they chose, "Hey, I can also start on whatever might be the next facet of my career." And I can
Mhm.
actually, if I'm working for the Giants, I can start to dabble into it while I am working for the Giants. It's not
Mhm.
too far to make a trip, right into the city, go to one of the networks and start doing some work, giving some analysis and things like that. But, when you think about like the Harbaughs and they're this big football brand that's been around the game forever,
Right.
to say one of them coaches the New York Giants just does not seem that odd, in my opinion. It seems like
That is
two
true.
a family and basically a franchise that somehow, some way would have synced up one way or another at some point.
Mhm. The media coverage of this since the Bills game and then since, McDermott has all been really, really fascinating to me. I've struggled with a lot of it and want to push back on a lot of it because Josh Allen to me, and I have so much respect for him. I think he's one of the greatest players in the game. I also feel like he's been really coddled relative to a lot of other quarterbacks because the reality is he is 0-7 in overtime playoff games. This was a year where their path was clearer than it had been for a very, very long time. And like I touched on earlier, he was some of the problem in this game. It wasn't that he had to do it all and then did whatever he could and still fell short. This wasn't a great Josh Allen game. How much blame does he deserve in this?
Oh, and that's the thing. Because Josh Allen's not going to run from this. He understands, what the gig is. Because you know what, he gets a lot of attaboys, gets a lot of pats on the back
A
for things
lot.
that maybe he also doesn't necessarily deserve. And so, hey, you were the guy the L's gonna hang around your neck. That's the first
Right.
one who's getting the L chain for Josh Allen. And that's probably part of it too. And look, I can't go get Josh Allen again. I can get somebody to coach this team, and there'll be a lot of guys who are going to line up to come work with
Right.
Josh Allen. I can't necessarily, and you can ask team like the Raiders, the Browns, and the list goes on and on. It ain't easy to go find a Josh Allen.
No.
But I think you're also at this point now where Josh is at his age, knowing, oh yeah, we can maybe see the end of Josh Allen's career.
Mm.
So, are we going to try to do it again with McDermott? And then what if it doesn't work next year? And, so I think they're at that critical point where, you know, like I always use the phrase, the kids are old enough that we can tell them. Mom and dad have been
Right.
struggling for a while. We're going to call it official. And I think that's kind of what it was. It maybe, and to be fair, maybe it wasn't always so perfect. And obviously, there's a name out there, which seems strange the way his last year just went. But there's a name out there who, since he left Buffalo, you know, where, it seems like Josh Allen, that was the guy in Brian Dable that he had a really, really good relationship
That's
with.
interesting.
And I'm wondering if, it was just never able to be recaptured with any type of structure that the Bills put with Josh after that. Remember, there was the whole Ken Dorsey thing,
Yep.
and Ken Dorsey, his first job was, "We need Josh Allen to play 20 games. We have to discourage Josh. We don't want him wasting the legs, taking the big hits early in the year." Oh my God, we're only 4-3. Josh, whatever you got to do, man. Do whatever you got to do to make it happen, get the W's. And I think they were just never able to truly get it working post Brian Dable with Josh Allen and whoever they kind of put as far as their offensive staff. And I think it was just, in their opinion, the right time. You could have found a way to keep it going, but you look at the numbers and look, we haven't gotten further than this. That's all you need to know. And sometimes you
Mhm.
got to make a change just for the sake of making a change.
We'll finish off with this. Who is the right coach for this team moving forward?
It's hard to believe, and I gotta wonder if it's not Brian Dable. And as crazy as it seems, the way it all went down with the Giants, and where it is, and obviously, the firing, but you have to think when you made this move. Obviously, you got to satisfy a Rooney Rule, this, that, and the
Mhm.
other thing. Because here's the other thing: the Bills, if they want somebody who is still actively coaching, they cannot talk to them their seasons are over. So if they like
Right.
anybody on the 4 teams remaining, February 8th, I think, is the earliest that they can. So that means you're going without a coach for another 2+ weeks,
That's true.
which also makes me think, hey, if we just made this move today, all right, we'll satisfy the Rooney Rule. We'll take in one of our assistant coaches, give him a dummy interview that's never going to equate to anything. Say we did the interview. And can we hear Buffalo Bills new head coach Brian Dable? I gotta think there's a lot of legs to it because if this is the way the move went, you've got to think that Josh Allen has got some input here. And if Josh Allen has some input here, it's not going to be for one of these 30-year-old whiz kid offensive guys that he's never
Mm.
met, never worked with. I think there's a good chance that they're going to go with something that is a known commodity in that building. And the only reason he left is because McDermott didn't deserve to lose his job in any way whatsoever. Dable finally got to the point where he deserved one. So I don't know. For me, it seems really, really simple that the Buffalo Bills will just hire Brian Dable.